On his first day as CEO of Phoenix Industries, Ethan Morgan discovers the cleaning lady is Emma Reynolds, the girl he's never forgotten, and she's hiding a life-altering secret that will shatter his carefully built world. A secret that could threaten everything he's worked for, and everything he thought he knew about their past. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The crisp November air bit at Ethan Morgan's face as he strode toward the gleaming headquarters of Phoenix Industries in downtown Boston. At 35, he had finally achieved what many considered impossible, becoming the youngest CEO in the company's 80-year history. The towering glass building reflected the morning sun, much like how Ethan's ambition had always reflected his determination to escape his humble beginnings. He paused for a moment, adjusting his custom-tailored suit and straightening his silk tie. This was supposed to be the pinnacle moment of his career, the culmination of years of sacrifice, relentless work, and calculated decisions. Yet something felt hollow about it all. Something had been missing for years, but he'd buried that feeling under spreadsheets and business acquisitions. First day as the big boss, he muttered to himself, checking his Rolex, a gift he'd bought himself after closing his first major deal. Time to make an impression. The security guard at the entrance straightened as Ethan approached. "Good morning, Mr. Morgan. Congratulations on the promotion, sir." "Thank you, Davis," Ethan replied, surprising the guard by remembering his name. Unlike his predecessor, Ethan had made it a point to know everyone who worked in the building during his time as COO. "How's your son doing at college?" "Started his second year at Boston University, sir. Doing great in engineering, just like you suggested." Ethan nodded with genuine satisfaction. Small connections like these mattered to him, perhaps because he remembered what it was like to be invisible. The executive elevator whisked him to the 40th floor, where his new corner office awaited. His assistant, Melissa, was already at her desk, a tablet in hand with his day's schedule meticulously planned. "Good morning, Mr. Morgan. The board would like to meet at 10 a.m. to discuss quarterly projections. You have lunch with the SVPs at noon, and the marketing team needs your approval on the new campaign by 3 p.m. "Thank you, Melissa," Ethan said, taking the tablet. "And how many times do I need to tell you to call me Ethan?" "At least once more, Mr. Morgan," she replied with a professional smile. "Your office has been prepared according to your specifications. Coffee is waiting on your desk." The massive corner office was intimidating even to Ethan. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Boston Harbor. Modern furnishings in sleek blacks and grays conveyed power and prestige. On one wall hung the awards and accolades he'd accumulated, tangible proof of his rise from nothing to everything. Yet, as he settled into the leather chair behind his imposing desk, Ethan felt strangely like an imposter. He swiveled to face the window, remembering the small apartment in South Boston where he'd grown up. His mother working 3 jobs, the scholarship that had been his ticket out, the promises he'd made, and the ones he'd broken. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Expecting Melissa, he called, "Come in." Instead, a woman in a gray uniform entered, pushing a cleaning cart. Her head was down, dark hair pulled back in a practical bun. "Sorry to disturb you, sir. I can come back later." Something in her voice froze Ethan in place. A cadence, a tone he hadn't heard in 17 years but would recognize anywhere. His heart hammered against his ribs as he stood slowly. "Emma?" The name left his lips before he could stop it. The woman's head snapped up, green eyes widening in shock as they met his. The cleaning supplies in her hands clattered to the floor. Emma Reynolds. His first love. The girl from the apartment down the hall. The one who'd tutored him through advanced physics. The one who'd believed in him when nobody else had. The one whose heart he'd broken when ambition pulled him away. "Ethan?" she whispered, the color draining from her face. For a moment neither moved, trapped in a surreal tableau. Emma, brilliant, vibrant Emma, who had been destined for medical school and groundbreaking research, was in a cleaner's uniform, standing in his office. I didn't know you worked here," he managed to say, his mind reeling. Emma quickly bent to pick up the fallen supplies, her movements tense. "I started last month. I usually work the night shift. They asked me to cover day shift temporarily." Her voice was carefully neutral, professional. "Emma, what happened?" "You were—" "I should get back to work." She cut him off, straightening. "I'll return later when you're in a meeting." The wall she'd erected between them was palpable, constructed of 17 years of silence in whatever circumstances had led her here. Ethan wanted to vault over his desk, to demand answers, to understand how the brightest star in his universe had ended up here. "Wait," he called, as she turned to leave. "Please." She paused at the door, her back to him, shoulders rigid. "Congratulations on the promotion, Mr. Morgan. You always said you'd make it to the top." The formal address stung worse than a slap. Before he could respond, she was gone, the door closing softly behind her. Ethan sank back into his chair, thunderstruck. Emma Reynolds. Here. Cleaning offices instead of saving lives in a hospital. It made no sense. She had been the valedictorian, the one with the perfect SAT scores, the scholarship offers from Ivy League schools. What could have possibly derailed her so completely? The intercom buzzed. "Mr. Morgan, the CFO is on line 1. Automatically, Ethan picked up the phone, his training in compartmentalization taking over, while his mind continued to reel. "Morgan here," he said, staring at the door through which Emma had disappeared. The morning passed in a blur of meetings and decisions. Ethan performed flawlessly on autopilot, his exterior projecting confidence and authority, while his thoughts remained fixated on Emma. By lunchtime, he couldn't stand it anymore. "Melissa," he called through the intercom, "find out everything you can about an employee named Emma Reynolds. She's on the cleaning staff." There was a pause. "Is there a problem with the janitorial services, sir?" "No, just—" He hesitated. "She's an old friend. I'd like to catch up." 20 minutes later, Melissa placed a file on his desk. "There isn't much, sir. Emma Reynolds, hired 5 weeks ago by Boston Cleaning Services, our contracted janitorial company. Usually works night shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. No other personal information in our records, since she's not directly employed by Phoenix." Ethan frowned. "Thank you, Melissa. Cancel my lunch with the SVPs." Personal emergency. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. With determination in every step, Ethan made his way to the maintenance department on the 2nd floor. The supervisor, a stocky man named Grayson, looked surprised to see the CEO in his cramped office. "Mr. Morgan, what can I do for you, sir?" "I need information about one of the cleaning staff. Emma Reynolds." Grayson's bushy eyebrows rose. "Reynolds? She's one of our best. Meticulous, never complains. Is there a problem?" "No problem at all. We're old friends, actually. I'd like to speak with her. She's on the executive floor today, covering for someone who called in sick. Should be on her lunch break in the staff cafeteria around now." Ethan thanked him and made his way to the ground floor cafeteria, a place he hadn't visited in years. The space was utilitarian, nothing like the executive dining room on the 39th floor. As he entered, conversations hushed, employees staring in surprise at the CEO in their midst. He spotted her immediately, sitting alone at a corner table, a worn paperback novel propped against her water bottle as she ate a sandwich from home. She looked up as the room quieted, her expression changing from confusion to wariness when she saw him. Ignoring the stares, Ethan walked directly to her table. "May I join you?" Emma closed her book slowly. "I don't think that's appropriate, Mr. Morgan." "Please, Emma. 5 minutes." After a hesitation that felt eternal, she nodded toward the chair across from her. Ethan sat acutely aware of the eyes watching them. "You know, there are probably a dozen corporate policies being broken right now," she said quietly, her gaze direct. "The CEO sitting with the cleaning lady is going to start rumors." "I don't care," Ethan replied honestly. "Emma, what happened? You were headed to Harvard Medical School. You had that full scholarship. You were going to cure cancer, remember? That was the plan." A shadow crossed her face. "Life doesn't always follow our plans, Ethan. You should know that better than anyone." The subtle dig wasn't lost on him. Their plan had been to go to Boston together. Him for business, her for medicine. They'd stay together, build a life. Until Wharton had offered him a full ride and the connections he'd needed to escape poverty forever. He'd chosen Pennsylvania over Boston, career over love. "I tried to find you," he said, lowering his voice. "After graduation. Your mother wouldn't tell me anything. Why would she? You broke her daughter's heart. Emma's tone wasn't accusatory, just matter of fact, which somehow made it worse. Water under the bridge now. But medical school, your career. I have to get back to work, she said, gathering her things. My break's almost over. Ethan reached across the table, stopping just short of touching her hand. Have dinner with me. Tonight. Please. I just want to understand. Emma studied him, and for a moment he glimpsed the girl he'd known. Brilliant, analytical, seeing right through his defenses. Why? What does it matter now, Ethan? You've clearly done well for yourself. Because I've thought about you every single day for 17 years, he admitted, the truth surprising even himself. Because none of this makes sense, and because I owe you an explanation too. Something flickered in her eyes. Pain, curiosity, or perhaps just resignation. Fine, one dinner, and then we go back to our separate lives. Thank you, Ethan said, relief washing through him. I'll pick you up after your shift. Where should I meet you? I'm working day shift this week. I finish at 5. She hesitated. Meet me at the employee exit on Pine Street. And Ethan? Nothing fancy. I'm not looking to be your charity case. With that, she stood and walked away, leaving her half-eaten sandwich behind. The rest of the day passed with excruciating slowness. Ethan moved through his meetings mechanically, signing documents and making decisions, while his mind remained fixed on Emma and the evening ahead. What had happened to derail her promising future? And why did seeing her affect him so deeply after all these years? At precisely 5 p.m., Ethan waited by the employee exit, having dismissed his driver for the evening. He changed into more casual clothes, dark jeans and a sweater, hoping to put Emma at ease. When she emerged, she'd changed too, from her uniform into simple jeans and a blue blouse, her dark hair loose around her shoulders. The sight of her, so familiar yet so different, made his chest tighten. I know a quiet place a few blocks from here, he suggested. We can walk if that's okay. Emma nodded, falling into step beside him. They walked in silence for several minutes, the awkwardness between them thick enough to touch. So, Ethan finally said, CEO of Phoenix Industries, that's impressive. You always said you'd run the place someday, Emma replied, even back when you were struggling through calculus, only because you helped me pass. He smiled at the memory. You were a better teacher than Professor Harrison ever was. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. You were a good student when you weren't distracted by basketball. The small exchange eased some of the tension. They reached a small Italian restaurant tucked away on a side street, intimate but not extravagant. The hostess led them to a corner table away from other diners. After they ordered, Ethan took a deep breath. Emma, please tell me what happened. The last I knew, you had acceptances from 3 medical schools with scholarships. Emma stared into her water glass, as if gathering her thoughts. My mother got sick, she said finally. Aggressive breast cancer, 3 months after graduation. The prognosis was poor, but there was an experimental treatment at Mass General, not covered by insurance. Understanding began to dawn on Ethan. You gave up your scholarship, she nodded. Deferred at first. Took a job as a medical assistant, thinking I'd work for a year, then start school. But the first treatment didn't work. There was another trial in Chicago, then another in Baltimore. She shrugged, the gesture containing years of sacrifice. Medical school kept getting pushed back. Your mother? Ethan asked gently. She fought for 6 years, Emma said, a hint of pride in her voice. Longer than any doctor predicted. She died when I was 26. I'm so sorry, Emma. I should have been there. You made your choice, she said without bitterness, and I made mine. But after she passed, why didn't you go back to school then? Emma looked at him directly, her green eyes clear and challenging. Medical school costs money, Ethan. By then, I had nearly $200,000 in medical debt. My credit was ruined. All those scholarships were long gone. Shame washed over him. While he'd been climbing the corporate ladder, amassing wealth and accolades, Emma had been drowning in debt from trying to save her mother. The contrast was stark and humbling. What about your research? You were brilliant. Any pharmaceutical company would have. I tried, she cut him off. But there's a gap on my resume that raises questions, and without credentials. She trailed off. I've worked as everything from a receptionist to a waitress. The cleaning job pays better than most, and the night shift works for my schedule." "Your schedule?" Ethan asked, puzzled. Something shifted in Emma's expression, a guardedness that made him suspect they were approaching the heart of her secret. "I take classes during the day. Community college. I'm working on a nursing degree. It's not medicine, but it's healthcare. And more importantly, it's affordable." Pride swelled in Ethan's chest. Even after everything, she hadn't given up on her dream of helping people. "That's amazing, Emma, truly." "Don't look at me like that," she said, shifting uncomfortably. "Like what?" "Like you admire me. I'm a 35-year-old college student cleaning offices at night. There's nothing admirable about that." "You're wrong," Ethan said firmly. "You sacrificed everything for your mother. And now you're rebuilding, despite every obstacle. That's more impressive than anything I've done." Their food arrived, temporarily pausing the conversation. As they ate, Ethan noticed Emma checking her phone repeatedly, a subtle anxiety in her movements. "Are you expecting a call?" he asked. "No, it's just—" She hesitated. "It's nothing. Tell me about you. How did the small-town boy make it to the corner office?" Ethan recognized the deflection, but decided not to push. "The usual way. Worked harder than everyone else. Made the right connections. Stepped on some toes I shouldn't have." "And some hearts?" Emma asked, her tone light but her eyes serious. Ethan set down his fork. "I never married, if that's what you're asking." "I wasn't. There were relationships. Nothing lasted." He hesitated, then added, "They weren't you." Emma looked away. "Don't, Ethan. It's been 17 years. And I've regretted leaving you every day of those 17 years, he said quietly. "I told myself I was doing it for us, that I needed Wharton's connections to build the life we deserved. But the truth is, I was scared. Scared of failing, scared of dragging you down with me if I did. You should have given me the choice," she said, hurt finally breaking through her composure. "You just left. A phone call, Ethan. I'm going to Wharton, not Boston. Good luck with your life, after 3 years together." The memory hit him like a physical blow. He'd been a coward, taking the easy way out rather than facing the possibility that she might have chosen to follow him, giving up her Harvard acceptance. Or worse, that they might have tried long distance and failed anyway. "You're right," he admitted. "I handled it terribly. I was 21 and stupid, and thought I was protecting both of us. I'm sorry, Emma, truly." Her phone buzzed again. This time, alarm flashed across her face as she checked it. "I need to go," she said abruptly, standing and gathering her purse. "What? We've barely eaten." "It's an emergency. I'm sorry. Thank you for dinner." Ethan stood as well, concern replacing his confusion. "At least let me drive you." "No," she said too quickly. "It's fine. I need to go alone." He watched helplessly as she rushed toward the door, then made a split-second decision. Throwing money on the table, he followed her out into the evening air. Emma was already halfway down the block, walking quickly while making a phone call. "I'm on my way," he heard her say. 20 minutes tops. Is he okay?" Ethan kept his distance but followed as she headed toward the subway station. Something was wrong. Seriously wrong, and despite their years apart, he couldn't shake the feeling that she needed help. Emma descended into the station, and Ethan followed, staying back far enough that she wouldn't notice him. They boarded the same train, Emma standing tensely by the doors, while Ethan positioned himself several passengers away. When she exited at a stop in Brighton, a modest neighborhood far from the luxury condos of downtown, he continued his discreet pursuit. She walked quickly through residential streets until she reached a small apartment building. Outside, a teenage boy paced anxiously on the steps. When he saw Emma approaching, his face flooded with relief. "Mom," he called, running to meet her. "He's getting worse. The fever is up to 103, and he's having trouble breathing." "Mom?" The word hit Ethan like a thunderbolt. Emma had a son, a teenage son who appeared to be around 16. 16 years. The timing wasn't lost on Ethan as he watched from behind a parked car, his mind racing with calculations and possibilities. "I called Dr. Patel," the boy continued. "She said to bring him to the ER right away. "Where's Mrs. Winters?" Emma asked, referring to someone Ethan didn't know. "She had to leave for her night shift. I told her I'd be okay until you got here." "Let's get him to the car," Emma said decisively, climbing the steps to the building. Ethan watched, as minutes later, Emma emerged with a teenager and a much younger boy, maybe 6 or 7 years old, wrapped in a blanket. The child was clearly ill, his small face flushed with fever as Emma carried him to an old sedan parked on the street. The pieces were falling into place with devastating clarity. Emma had a son, a teenage son she'd been pregnant with when Ethan left for Wharton, a son she'd never told him about, a son who was, almost certainly, his. Without hesitation, Ethan stepped out from his hiding place and strode toward Emma, his heart pounding with each step. Her eyes widened in shock when she saw him, a mix of emotions flashing across her face. Surprise, anger, and something like fear. "Ethan? Did you follow me?" "Emma? Let me help," he said, ignoring her question and focusing on the sick child in her arms. "My car's just around the corner. It'll be faster than yours." The teenager looked between them, confusion evident in his features that so closely resembled Ethan's own. The same straight nose, the same determined jaw. "Mom, who is this?" "A former friend," Emma replied, hesitation clear in her voice. "Ethan, this really isn't." "Please, Emma," Ethan interrupted, his voice gentle but firm. "Your son needs to get to the hospital now. Let me help you." She hesitated, clearly torn between pride and practicality. The small boy in her arms whimpered, his breathing labored, and her decision was made. "Fine. Where's your car?" 2 minutes later, they were in Ethan's luxury sedan, the sick child cradled in Emma's lap in the back seat while the teenager sat up front with Ethan. The contrast between the modest apartment they'd left and the vehicle's plush interior couldn't have been more stark. "Mass General," Emma directed, her voice tense. "Emergency entrance." Ethan navigated through evening traffic with focused urgency, occasionally glancing in the rearview mirror at Emma comforting the younger boy. "What's wrong with him?" he asked, trying to keep his voice casual despite the hurricane of questions swirling in his mind. "Asthma attack," Emma replied. "He has chronic respiratory issues." The teenager in the passenger seat was studying Ethan with an intensity that was unsettling. His eyes, Ethan's eyes, narrowed slightly. "I'm Ethan Morgan," he said, extending his hand to the boy without taking his eyes off the road. "I work with your mother." "Jason," the teenager replied, shaking his hand with a firm grip. "And that's my brother, Liam." Brother. The word both relieved and confused Ethan. If Jason was Emma's son, potentially his son, then who was Liam's father? "How old are you, Jason?" Ethan asked, unable to stop himself. 16, the boy replied, confirming Ethan's suspicion. 17 next month. Emma's eyes met Ethan's in the rearview mirror, her expression guarded, warning him not to pursue this line of questioning now. He nodded slightly, understanding. The priority was getting the younger child to the hospital. When they arrived at the emergency entrance, Ethan pulled up directly to the doors. "I'll park and meet you inside," he told Emma, as she rushed out with Liam, Jason following close behind. By the time Ethan entered the emergency room, Emma was already at the triage desk, her voice carrying the authority of someone familiar with medical protocols. 6-year-old male, history of reactive airway disease, current respiratory distress with fever of 103. Albuterol treatment at home was ineffective. The nurse responded immediately, calling for a doctor and wheeling a small gurney toward them. Within minutes, Liam was whisked away through swinging doors, Emma at his side, while Jason was directed to a waiting area. Ethan joined the teenager, sitting beside him in uncomfortable plastic chairs. For several minutes, neither spoke, the awkwardness between them palpable. "So," Jason finally said, "you work with my mom?" Ethan shifted in his seat. "Yes, at Phoenix Industries." "As what?" Jason's direct question reminded Ethan so much of Emma at that age, cutting straight to the point. "I'm the CEO," Ethan admitted, watching the boy's eyebrows rise in surprise. "And you're driving cleaning staff to the hospital?" That seems weird. The kid was perceptive, another trait he could have inherited from either Ethan or Emma. "Your mother and I are old friends," Ethan explained carefully. "We knew each other in high school." Jason nodded slowly, processing this information. She never mentioned you. The simple statement stung more than Ethan expected. We lost touch for a long time. So why are you here now? Jason asked bluntly. Before Ethan could formulate a response, Emma emerged from the treatment area, looking exhausted but relieved. They've got his breathing stabilized, she told Jason, then noticed Ethan. Surprise flickered across her face as if she hadn't expected him to stay. They're admitting him for observation overnight. You should go home, Jason. You have school tomorrow. I'm not leaving, the teenager said firmly. Liam needs us both. Emma sighed, clearly too tired to argue. She turned to Ethan. Thank you for the ride. You don't need to stay. I'd like to, Ethan said quietly. If that's okay. Something in his tone must have reached her, because after a long moment, she nodded. The doctor wants to speak with me. It might be a while. I'll wait, Ethan assured her. Can I get either of you something? Coffee? Food? Coffee would be great, Emma admitted. Black. 1 sugar. Still the same, Ethan noted with a small smile. Jason, anything for you? Hot chocolate? The boy asked, suddenly looking younger than his 16 years. As Ethan walked to the cafeteria, his mind raced with questions. The timing made it virtually certain that Jason was his son, conceived just before he'd left for Wharton. But Emma had never told him, never reached out. And now there was a younger child with health problems, a child who couldn't possibly be his. When he returned with the drinks, he found Jason alone in the waiting area, scrolling through his phone. Where's your mom? Ethan asked, handing him the hot chocolate. Still talking to the doctors. Jason took a sip, then studied Ethan openly. So how come I've never heard of you if you and Mom were such good friends? Ethan sat beside him, choosing his words carefully. We had a complicated relationship. The way we parted wasn't great. You hurt her, Jason stated matter-of-factly. Yes, Ethan admitted, seeing no point in lying. I made choices I've regretted ever since. Jason nodded, seemingly satisfied with the honesty. She doesn't talk about the past much, especially not about my father. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. What do you know about him? Not much, Jason shrugged. He left before I was born. Mom says he wasn't ready for a family. He looked directly at Ethan. She doesn't know I found the old pictures, though. Pictures? Ethan repeated, his mouth suddenly dry. Yeah. In a box in her closet. She kept some photos from high school. Jason studied Ethan's face with uncomfortable intensity. You were in a lot of them. The implication hung between them, neither willing to voice it aloud. Ethan was saved from responding when Emma approached, looking even more tired than before. They've got him settled, she said, accepting the coffee from Ethan with a grateful nod. The doctor thinks it's pneumonia on top of his asthma. They've started antibiotics. Can I see him? Jason asked. For a few minutes. Emma agreed. Room 342. I'll be right there. As Jason walked away, an uncomfortable silence fell between Ethan and Emma. She wouldn't meet his eyes, staring instead at the steam rising from her coffee cup. How long have you known? Ethan finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Emma looked up sharply. Known what? That Jason is my son. She didn't deny it, which was confirmation enough. Instead, she sank into a chair, the weight of 17 years of secrets visible in the slump of her shoulders. I found out 2 weeks after you left for Wharton, she said quietly. I tried to call you. Ethan's mind raced back, remembering the calls he'd ignored, the voicemails he'd deleted without listening, too afraid of being pulled back into a relationship he'd convinced himself would hold them both back. I never knew, he whispered, the enormity of his mistake crushing him. Emma, you have to believe me. If I had known... What? She interrupted. You would have come back? Given up your big dreams? Somehow I doubt that. The bitterness in her voice was justified, and they both knew it. I would have helped, Ethan insisted. Financially, at least. You wouldn't have had to struggle alone. Emma laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. That's exactly why I stopped trying to reach you. I didn't want your money, Ethan. I wanted... She trailed off, then shook her head. It doesn't matter now. It matters to me, he said, leaning forward. And it matters to Jason. He deserves to know his father. Does he? Emma challenged. Or do you just suddenly want to play dad now that it's convenient? Now that the hard years are behind us. Her words hit their mark, sharp and true. Ethan had no right to walk into their lives now, demanding a place after being absent for so long, even if that absence had been unintentional. I'm not trying to disrupt your lives, he said carefully. But I can't just walk away again now that I know. Jason is my son. Emma looked toward the hallway where Jason had disappeared. He's a good kid. Smart, like you. Stubborn, like both of us. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. He wants to be an engineer. Pride swelled in Ethan's chest at this small glimpse into his son's character. And Liam? He asked gently. If you don't mind me asking. Emma's expression clouded. Liam's father isn't in the picture. He left when I was 4 months pregnant. I'm sorry, Ethan said, meaning it. That must have been difficult. It was what it was, Emma replied with the resilience he remembered so well. We manage. The medical bills must be substantial, Ethan observed, noting how her shoulders tensed at the mention of money. With Liam's condition. We have state insurance, she said stiffly. It covers the basics. Ethan hesitated, knowing he was treading on delicate ground. Emma, I want to help. Not just with tonight, but going forward. For both boys. We don't need your charity, she said immediately. The pride he'd always admired now a barrier between them. It's not charity, Ethan countered. It's responsibility. I've missed 16 years of child support, 16 birthdays, 16 Christmases. His voice caught. Let me do something now. Emma studied him, her green eyes searching his face for sincerity. And what happens when you get bored of playing family man? When the novelty wears off? Do you disappear again? The question was fair, and Ethan knew it. I won't, he promised. But I understand why you don't trust that. So let me prove it, day by day. Before Emma could respond, Jason returned, his expression somber. He's sleeping, he reported. But he looks so small with all those tubes. Emma stood, wrapping an arm around her son's shoulders. The doctors know what they're doing. He'll be better soon. Ethan watched them, this little family that should have included him, and made a silent vow that somehow he would find a way to be part of their lives, if they would let him. You should go home and get some sleep, Jason, Emma urged. I'll stay with Liam. I'm not leaving, the teenager repeated stubbornly. You have that calculus test tomorrow, Emma reminded him. I'll do fine, Jason insisted. I'm not leaving you guys here alone. Ethan recognized the determination in the set of Jason's jaw. It was like looking in a mirror. What if I stay with your mom? Ethan offered. That way she's not alone, and you can get some rest for your test. Jason looked skeptical. You'd do that? Of course, Ethan assured him. It's not necessary. Emma protested, but her exhaustion was evident. I want to help, Ethan said simply. Please let me. After a brief family conference, it was decided. Jason would go home to sleep, returning in the morning before school to check on his brother. Ethan would stay at the hospital with Emma, keeping her company through the long night. As Jason prepared to leave, he studied Ethan with that same intense gaze. Take care of them, he said, the words carrying more weight than a 16-year-old's should. I will, Ethan promised, a silent understanding passing between them. Once Jason had gone, Ethan and Emma made their way to Liam's room. The small boy lay in a hospital bed that seemed to swallow him. Oxygen tubes in his nose, an IV in his tiny arm, monitors beeping steadily beside him. Seeing him like this, vulnerable and fragile, stirred something protective in Ethan that surprised him with its intensity. Emma took the chair beside the bed, automatically reaching for Liam's hand. Ethan stood awkwardly by the door, feeling like an intruder in this intimate family moment. "You can sit," Emma said, gesturing to another chair. "It's going to be a long night." Ethan settled into the chair, maintaining a respectful distance. For a long while, they sat in silence, the only sounds the rhythmic beeping of monitors and Liam's now easier breathing. "He loves dinosaurs," Emma said suddenly, breaking the quiet. "Knows the name of every single one. Corrects the museum guides when they get details wrong." Ethan smiled, grateful for this small offering. "Smart kid." "Too smart sometimes," Emma agreed, a mother's pride evident in her voice. Like when he figured out the alarm code and snuck out to the backyard at 5 a.m. to look for fossils in the dirt. The story painted a picture of a curious, adventurous child, a little boy Ethan was just beginning to know existed. "How long has he had breathing problems?" Ethan asked. "Since he was a baby," Emma replied, her fingers gently stroking Liam's hair. "He was born prematurely, spent his first month in the NICU." Ethan tried to imagine Emma going through that alone, the fear, the uncertainty, the sleepless nights, while also raising a young Jason. "You're remarkable," he said softly. "What you've done for them, on your own." Emma shook her head slightly. "I did what any mother would do." "No," Ethan insisted. "Most people would have crumbled under half of what you faced. Your mother's illness, raising Jason alone, Liam's health issues, working nights while taking classes." Emma looked at him directly for the first time since they'd entered the room. "I didn't have the luxury of crumbling." The simple truth of her statement humbled him. While he'd been climbing corporate ladders, focused solely on his own success, Emma had been fighting battles on multiple fronts without the resources or support he'd taken for granted. "I want to be part of their lives, Emma," Ethan said quietly. "Not just Jason's. Both of them, if you'll let me." Emma's expression grew guarded again. "Why now? Because Jason looks like you? Because you feel guilty?" "Because they're your children," Ethan answered honestly. "And that alone makes them important to me. Yes, Jason is biologically mine, and I want to know him. But Liam is his brother, and I care about him too." His sincerity seemed to surprise her. She studied him for a long moment, then sighed. "It's not that simple, Ethan. You can't just walk in after 16 years and become dad. We have a life, routines, challenges you know nothing about." "Then teach me," he said simply. "Let me learn. I'm not asking to move in tomorrow or take over. I'm asking for a chance to be there for all of you, in whatever way works." Emma's eyes filled with unexpected tears. "Do you have any idea how many times I wished for this? How many nights I sat up with a colicky baby, or a sick child, or worrying about bills, just wishing I wasn't doing it alone?" Her voice broke. "And now you show up, successful and polished, wanting to play hero." "Not a hero," Ethan corrected gently. "Just a man trying to fix the biggest mistake of his life." A nurse entered then, checking Liam's vital signs and adjusting his medication. When she left, the emotional intensity of the moment had passed, leaving an exhausted silence between them. "Try to get some sleep," Ethan suggested, noticing how Emma's eyelids drooped. "I'll keep watch." To his surprise, she didn't argue, simply curling up in her chair in a position that spoke of long practice sleeping in hospital rooms. Within minutes, her breathing had deepened, her body surrendering to the exhaustion. Ethan watched over mother and child through the quiet hours of the night. Around 3 a.m., Liam stirred, his eyes fluttering open with confusion. "Mommy?" he called weakly. Ethan moved closer, not wanting to wake Emma, who had finally found rest. "Your mom's right here," he said softly. "She's sleeping. I'm a friend of hers." The little boy studied him with solemn eyes. "Are you a doctor?" "No," Ethan smiled. "Just a friend. Are you thirsty?" Liam nodded, and Ethan carefully helped him take a few sips of water through a straw. The simple act of caring for this child, a child who, until hours ago, he hadn't known existed, felt strangely natural. "My chest hurts," Liam whispered. "The medicine will help with that," Ethan assured him. "Try to go back to sleep." "Will you tell me a story?" the boy asked, his voice small and vulnerable. Ethan hesitated, then nodded. "What kind of story do you like?" "Dinosaurs," Liam said, confirming what Emma had told him. "T-Rex ones." So Ethan Morgan, CEO of Phoenix Industries, sat beside a hospital bed in the early hours of the morning, spinning a tale about a friendly T-Rex who protected smaller dinosaurs from danger. He kept his voice low, weaving in details about courage and perseverance until Liam's eyelids grew heavy again. "You tell good stories," the boy murmured as he drifted back to sleep. When Ethan looked up, he found Emma watching them, her expression unreadable. "How long have you been awake?" he asked softly. "Long enough," she replied. "He doesn't usually warm up to strangers." "Must be my dinosaur expertise," Ethan said with a small smile. Emma shifted in her chair, wincing at the stiffness in her neck. "You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to," Ethan said simply. Morning arrived with a stream of doctors and nurses, checking Liam's progress and adjusting his treatment plan. The boy's fever had broken overnight, and his breathing had improved significantly. By 7 a.m., Jason had returned, looking remarkably put together for a teenager who'd had little sleep. "How is he?" he asked, entering the room with the cautious movements of someone who'd spent too much time in hospitals. "Better," Emma assured him. "The antibiotics are working." Jason nodded, then turned to Ethan with surprise. "You actually stayed all night." There was a note of grudging respect in the teenager's voice that Ethan didn't miss. "I said I would. Most people say a lot of things," Jason observed, with the cynicism of someone who had seen promises broken before. Ethan looked directly at his son, a phrase that still sent a jolt through him. "I'm not most people." Something shifted in Jason's expression. Not quite acceptance, but perhaps a willingness to suspend judgment. "The doctor says Liam can probably go home tomorrow," Emma told Jason. "But you need to get to school. You have that test." "I will," the teenager promised. "Just wanted to check on the little monster first." He approached the bed, ruffling Liam's hair gently. "Hey, buddy. Feeling better?" Liam nodded sleepily. "Mr. Ethan told me a T-Rex story." Jason's eyebrows rose as he glanced between his mother and Ethan. "Did he?" "It was a good one," Liam assured him solemnly. A smile tugged at Jason's lips. The first genuine smile Ethan had seen from him. Well, if he knows about dinosaurs, he can't be all bad. The simple comment, delivered with teenage nonchalance, felt like a significant concession. After Jason left for school, a social worker arrived to discuss Liam's case with Emma. Ethan excused himself to give them privacy, taking the opportunity to make some calls. His assistant was surprised to hear he wouldn't be in the office for a second day. But Ethan was firm. "Family emergency," he told her, the words feeling both foreign and right on his tongue. When he returned to Liam's room, Emma was alone with the sleeping child, her expression troubled. "Everything okay?" Ethan asked, settling back into his chair. Emma sighed. "The social worker wants to connect us with some resources for families with chronically ill children. It's helpful, but..." "But?" "She's recommending a specialist at Boston Children's for Liam's ongoing care. Someone who specifically treats pediatric respiratory conditions." Emma's voice was carefully controlled. "It would be better for him long-term, but our insurance won't cover it." Ethan saw the defeat in her posture, the weight of yet another obstacle she couldn't overcome alone. "Let me help," he said quietly. "Please, Emma. Not for you, not for me, but for him." "You can't just throw money at 16 years of absence," she said. but there was less resistance in her tone than before. "I know that," Ethan acknowledged. "Money doesn't solve everything. But in this case, it can get Liam the care he needs while we figure out the rest." Emma looked at her younger son, so small in the hospital bed, then back at Ethan. "And what exactly is the rest?" It was the opening he'd been waiting for. A chance to articulate what he wanted, what he hoped for. "I want to know my son," Ethan said simply. "I want to support both your boys. Financially, yes, but also by being present. I want to earn your trust again, day by day. And maybe, eventually—" He hesitated, then decided honesty was the only approach. "Maybe we can see if there's still something between us worth rebuilding." Emma's eyes widened slightly at the last part. "Ethan, I'm not asking for an answer now," he interrupted gently. "Or even soon. Just a chance to try. To be part of your lives in whatever way works for all of you." For a long moment, Emma was silent, her eyes searching his face as if looking for any sign of insincerity or manipulation. Finding none, she took a deep breath. "Start with Jason," she said finally. "He needs to know the truth, from both of us, and he needs time to process it, to decide for himself what kind of relationship he wants with you." Relief washed over Ethan. It wasn't everything, but it was a beginning. "Thank you," he said. "When should we tell him?" "Tonight," Emma decided, "after Liam's asleep." "And Ethan?" Her voice grew firm. "If you're going to be in their lives, it has to be consistently. No disappearing when it gets complicated or when work demands your attention. These boys have had enough inconsistency." "I understand," Ethan said, and he did. The magnitude of what he was committing to, what he wanted to commit to, wasn't lost on him. His priorities, which had seemed so clear just 2 days ago, had shifted fundamentally. As if reading his thoughts, Emma added, "Your life isn't exactly set up for family responsibilities. CEOs don't typically have time for school events and doctor's appointments." "Then I'll change my life," Ethan said, with a certainty that surprised even him. "The company ran before I was CEO. It can run without me being there every minute." Emma's words hung in the air between them, a challenge and a test. Ethan knew she was right. His life as CEO demanded constant attention, endless meetings, and international travel. How could he possibly be the father Jason needed or the support Emma and Liam deserved? "I mean it," Ethan said quietly, conviction in his voice. "I've spent 17 years chasing success, thinking it would fill the emptiness I've felt since I left you. It hasn't." He looked at Liam's sleeping form, then back at Emma. "This family matters more." Something softened in Emma's expression, but before she could respond, Liam stirred, his eyes fluttering open. "Mommy," he called weakly. "My dinosaur book?" Emma smiled, reaching for her bag. "Jason brought it from home this morning." As Emma read to Liam about prehistoric creatures, Ethan watched them, struck by how much he'd missed, not just with Jason, but with Emma. The way she created different voices for each character. The gentle patience in her explanations of complicated dinosaur names. The absolute focus she gave her son, as if nothing else in the world existed in that moment. Later that afternoon, the doctor returned with good news. Liam's lungs were clearing, and if he continued improving, he could go home the next day. Emma's relief was palpable, though Ethan noticed the worry that flickered across her face at the mention of follow-up appointments with specialists. When Jason returned from school that evening, he came bearing good news of his own. "Aced the calculus test," he announced, dropping his backpack by the door. "Even the extra credit problem." "That's my boy," Emma said proudly, hugging him. "I knew you would." Ethan felt a pang, watching this moment of parental pride that should have been partly his. The ease between mother and son spoke of years of mutual support and shared triumphs. He was an outsider here, a stranger to the rhythms of their family life. Later, after Liam had fallen asleep and a nurse had brought Emma and Jason sandwiches from the cafeteria, Ethan knew it was time. "Jason," Emma said softly, "there's something important we need to talk to you about." The teenager looked between them, wariness creeping into his expression. "What's going on?" Emma glanced at Ethan, then back to her son. "It's about your father." Jason stiffened. "What about him?" "I haven't been entirely honest with you," Emma admitted, her voice steady despite the difficulty of the conversation. "About who he was, and why he wasn't in our lives. "Mom, it's okay," Jason interrupted. "I figured it out already." He looked directly at Ethan. "It's him, isn't it?" The directness of the question caught them both off guard. Emma recovered first. "Yes," she confirmed simply. "Ethan is your biological father." Jason nodded, absorbing this confirmation of what he'd already suspected. "Did you know?" he asked Ethan, his tone carefully neutral. "About me?" "No," Ethan answered honestly. "Not until yesterday. If I had known, Jason, I swear to you, I would have been there." The teenager's expression was guarded, years of wondering about his absent father evident in the tension of his shoulders. Why should I believe that? It was a fair question, one Ethan had been asking himself since the revelation. What proof did he have that he would have stepped up 17 years ago, when his ambition had already led him to leave Emma behind? "You shouldn't," Ethan admitted. "Not based on words alone. I can only prove it by my actions going forward, if you'll give me the chance." Jason looked to his mother, searching her face. "And you're okay with this? After everything?" Emma reached for her son's hand. "That's up to you, Jason. If you want to get to know Ethan, to have him in your life, I won't stand in the way. But if you're not ready, or if you don't want that relationship, I'll support that decision too." The maturity of her response, putting Jason's needs above her own complicated feelings, moved Ethan deeply. This was the Emma he remembered, selfless and strong, but with a wisdom that 17 years of single parenthood had clearly deepened. Jason was quiet for a long moment, processing. "I need time," he finally said, "to think about all this." "Of course," Ethan agreed immediately. "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." The teenager nodded, then stood. "I'm gonna get some air." After Jason left, silence fell between Ethan and Emma, heavy with the weight of the past and the uncertainty of the future. "That went better than I expected," Emma admitted. "He's remarkably composed," Ethan observed. Most teenagers would have exploded. "Jason's had to grow up fast," Emma said, a touch of sadness in her voice. "He's been my partner in a lot of ways, especially since Liam was born." Ethan's heart ached at the thought of a child shouldering adult responsibilities, stepping into the role that should have been his. "I want to change that, Emma. For both of you. For all of you." "How?" she asked. The practical question of a woman who had learned to depend on concrete realities, not promises or intentions. "I have some ideas," Ethan said. "But first, let's focus on getting Liam home and settled." The next morning, Liam was discharged with prescriptions for antibiotics and instructions for follow-up care. Ethan drove them home, carrying the sleepy child up to their third-floor apartment, while Emma gathered their belongings. The modest two-bedroom space was clean and organized, but signs of financial strain were evident in the worn furniture and dated appliances. Jason gave up his room when Liam was born. Emma explained as she showed Ethan to the smaller bedroom where both boys slept, Jason on a twin bed, Liam in a child's bed decorated with dinosaur stickers. "We make it work." After settling Liam into his bed with his favorite stuffed T-Rex, Emma joined Ethan in the small living room. He noticed the textbooks stacked neatly on the coffee table, nursing course materials, alongside bills organized in careful piles. "I should get going," Ethan said, aware of Emma's exhaustion after 2 nights at the hospital. "You need rest. But I'd like to come back tomorrow, if that's okay, to check on Liam and maybe talk more." Emma nodded, too tired to argue. "Jason has basketball practice after school. Liam and I will be here." As Ethan drove back to his luxury high-rise condo, the contrast between the two worlds he now inhabited couldn't have been more stark. His spacious, professionally decorated apartment felt empty and soulless compared to the small, lived-in home he'd just left. That night, unable to sleep, Ethan made a decision. Reaching for his laptop, he began researching pediatric pulmonologists at Boston Children's Hospital, making notes about treatments and specialists. Then he opened a new document and started drafting a proposal, not for a business deal, but for a life change. The next day, Ethan arrived at Emma's apartment in the early afternoon carrying 2 bags of groceries and a wrapped package. Emma opened the door, looking rested but surprised. "You went shopping?" she asked, eyeing the bags. "I thought I'd make dinner," Ethan explained. "That is, if you'll let me. I remember you always liked my pasta primavera." A ghost of a smile touched Emma's lips. "You remember that?" "I remember everything about you, Emma," Ethan said quietly. "Even the things I tried to forget." She stepped aside to let him in, watching with curious eyes as he moved confidently into the small kitchen and began unpacking groceries. "Liam's napping," she told him. "The medicine makes him drowsy." "Good, that gives us time to talk," Ethan replied, setting down the wrapped package on the counter. "This is for him, when he wakes up." Emma picked it up, weighing it in her hands. "You didn't have to bring gifts." "It's nothing extravagant," Ethan assured her. "Just something I thought he'd like." As Ethan prepared the ingredients for dinner, Emma sat at the small kitchen table, watching him work. The domestic scene felt strangely natural, as if they'd fallen into rhythms established long ago. "I've been thinking about what you said," Ethan began, chopping vegetables with practiced ease. "About my life not being set up for family responsibilities. You're right. It isn't. Or at least, it wasn't." Emma raised an eyebrow. "Meaning?" "I spoke with the board this morning," Ethan said, keeping his tone casual despite the magnitude of what he was sharing. "I'm stepping down as CEO." The knife Emma had been using to slice bread clattered to the table. "What?" "Ethan. No. You can't do that. Not because of us." "I'm not giving up my role in the company entirely," he clarified. "I'm moving to chairman of the board. Less day-to-day management, more strategic oversight. It means regular hours, minimal travel, and the flexibility to be present for the boys." Emma stared at him, disbelief written across her face. "You're restructuring your entire career because of 2 days with children you just met?" "No," Ethan corrected gently. "I'm restructuring a career that has taken everything and given back very little genuine happiness. Finding you and Jason and Liam just made me realize what I've been missing all these years." "The board agreed to this?" Emma asked, still processing. "They weren't thrilled," Ethan admitted. "But I made a compelling case for work-life balance and sustainable leadership. Plus, my COO is more than ready to step up." Emma shook her head slowly. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Ethan assured her. "This decision is about me, not about expectations for you or us. I just wanted you to know that I meant what I said about making family a priority." Before Emma could respond, small footsteps padded into the kitchen. Liam stood in the doorway, hair tousled from sleep, clutching his dinosaur. "Mr. Ethan is back," he observed, rubbing his eyes. "I am," Ethan smiled, kneeling to the child's level. "And I brought something for you, if it's okay with your mom." Emma nodded, and Ethan handed Liam the package. The boy tore into it eagerly, his eyes widening as he revealed a detailed model dinosaur skeleton kit. "It's a triceratops," Liam exclaimed, excitement overcoming his lingering illness. "Can we build it now?" "Let's eat dinner first," Emma suggested. "Then maybe you and Mr. Ethan can start on it." As they shared the meal Ethan had prepared, he watched the easy interaction between mother and son. Liam, despite his recent hospital stay, was animated as he explained the differences between herbivore and carnivore dinosaurs, his knowledge impressive for a 6-year-old. "He gets his brains from you," Ethan said to Emma as they cleared the dishes later, Liam absorbed in examining the pieces of his new model. "And his stubbornness," Emma added with a small smile. "Just like his brother." The mention of Jason sobered them both. "Has he said anything?" "About yesterday?" Ethan asked. Emma shook her head. "He needs time. Jason processes things thoroughly before he talks about them." "Like someone else I know," Ethan observed, remembering how Emma had always needed space to think through problems. As the evening progressed, Ethan and Liam worked on the dinosaur model at the kitchen table, while Emma caught up on coursework nearby. The domesticity of the scene wasn't lost on any of them. When the front door opened around 7, Jason entered, still in his basketball practice clothes, his expression guarded as he noticed Ethan. "You're still here," he observed. "I made dinner," Ethan replied. "There's plenty left if you're hungry." Jason nodded, disappearing to shower and change. When he returned, he filled a plate silently, studying Ethan and Liam's progress on the model. "You're putting the ribcage on backward," he pointed out, setting down his fork. "I told him that!" Liam exclaimed. "But he didn't believe me." Jason rolled his eyes, a flash of teenage exasperation breaking through his reserve. "Let me see." He joined them at the table, expertly turning the piece and clicking it into place. "Mom and I built a T-Rex one last year. The instructions are always confusing." Ethan watched as Jason naturally took over, guiding his younger brother, his patience and gentleness revealing a maturity beyond his years. This was a side of his son he was just beginning to discover, the responsible older brother, the second parent in all but name. "You're good at this," Ethan commented. Jason shrugged, but there was pride in the gesture. "Liam and I do a lot of projects together. Jason helps me with homework too," Liam added. "He's super smart." "I believe it," Ethan said sincerely. "I was never great at science." "That was your mom's area." "Mom said you were good at business stuff," Jason replied, the first acknowledgement that he and Emma had discussed Ethan over the years. "Numbers made sense to me," Ethan confirmed. "Still do. But the real world is messier than spreadsheets. Took me a long time to learn that." Jason nodded, absorbing this. "Coach says I could get a basketball scholarship if I keep my grades up." "That's impressive," Ethan said, recognizing the olive branch for what it was. A small sharing of personal information. "I'd love to see you play sometime." "We have a game Friday," Jason said casually, though the invitation was clear. "I'll be there," Ethan promised. Later, after Liam had been tucked into bed with stories of prehistoric adventures, Ethan helped Emma with the dishes while Jason finished homework at the table. "I should go," Ethan said finally, aware of overstaying his welcome. "Thank you for dinner." "You made dinner," Emma reminded him with a small smile. "Still." Ethan gathered his coat. "Jason, I'll see you Friday at your game." The teenager nodded, looking up from his textbook. 7 o'clock. Westwood High. At the door, Emma walked Ethan out, stepping into the hallway for a moment of privacy. "You didn't have to do all this," she said quietly. "The dinner, the model for Liam." "I wanted to," Ethan replied. "Emma, I know I can't make up for 17 years in a few days, but I'm committed to being part of their lives, part of your lives, if you'll let me." Emma studied him, her green eyes searching his face. "And if it doesn't work out? If it's too complicated, or if Jason decides he doesn't want a relationship with you?" "Then I'll respect that," Ethan said honestly. "But I'll still do everything I can to support all of you. No strings attached." Emma seemed to make a decision then, her posture shifting subtly. "There's something you should know." "About Liam." Ethan waited, sensing the importance of whatever she was about to share. "His father," Emma began, then paused, gathering courage. "His father was my professor in nursing school. The first attempt, right after Mom died. He was married, older. When I told him I was pregnant, he denied everything, threatened to fail me if I didn't take care of it." Anger flared in Ethan's chest at the thought of someone treating Emma that way. What a coward. "I dropped out," Emma continued, "used what little savings I had to survive the pregnancy. When Liam was born with respiratory issues, the medical bills wiped me out completely. That's why I'm starting over now, at 35. The vulnerability in her admission touched Ethan deeply. "Thank you for telling me." "I wanted you to understand," Emma said softly, "why I'm so protective. Why I can't just let you waltz in with good intentions and promises." "I understand," Ethan assured her. "And I'm not asking you to trust me overnight. I'm asking for the chance to earn that trust, day by day." Emma nodded, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. "Good night, Ethan." The weeks that followed fell into a new pattern. Ethan attended Jason's basketball games, cheering from the stands alongside Emma and a carefully bundled Liam. He helped with homework, learned the routines of medication schedules and doctor appointments, and gradually integrated himself into their lives. The transition at Phoenix Industries progressed smoothly, with Ethan's COO stepping into the CEO role while Ethan took on the less demanding position of chairman. His new schedule allowed him to pick Liam up from school when Emma had classes, and to attend parent-teacher conferences with her for both boys. One evening, about a month after their reconnection, Ethan arrived at Emma's apartment to find her surrounded by paperwork, frustration evident in her expression. "What's wrong?" he asked, setting down the groceries he'd brought for their now regular family dinner. "Financial aid forms for next semester," Emma sighed. "The scholarship I was counting on fell through." Ethan sat beside her at the table. "Let me help," he offered gently. "Not with," he added quickly, seeing her expression. "With the forms. Financial paperwork is kind of my specialty." As they worked through the applications together, Ethan was struck by how far they'd come in just a few weeks. The awkwardness that had initially defined their interactions had given way to a comfortable familiarity, not quite what they'd had before, but something new and promising. Later that night, after the boys were in bed, Emma joined Ethan on the small balcony outside her apartment. The spring air was cool but pleasant, the stars visible despite the city lights. "Jason asked me something interesting today," Emma said, breaking the comfortable silence. "He wanted to know if you were planning to move closer to us." Ethan's heart quickened. "What did you tell him?" "That he should ask you himself," Emma replied. "But it got me thinking. You've been here almost every day for a month. Your condo is across town. It can't be convenient." "I don't mind the drive," Ethan said carefully, not wanting to presume anything. Emma turned to face him, the moonlight illuminating her features. "You've kept your word, Ethan. Every promise you've made, you've kept. The boys are starting to count on you. Jason even mentioned wanting to intern at Phoenix this summer." "He'd be great," Ethan said, pride swelling in his chest. "I'd love to have him there." "And Liam asks for you when you're not here," Emma continued. "He started calling you Dad when he talks about you. Did you know that?" Emotion tightened Ethan's throat. "I didn't." "The thing is," Emma said, her voice softening, "I'm starting to count on you too. And that terrifies me." The vulnerability in her admission touched something deep within Ethan. Slowly, giving her time to pull away, he reached for her hand. "I'm not going anywhere, Emma," he promised. "Not this time." She didn't pull away. Instead, her fingers intertwined with his, a small gesture carrying the weight of 17 years of separation and the promise of a future together. "There's a 3-bedroom apartment available in this building," she said quietly. "Second floor. Much better for Liam's breathing than climbing to the 3rd floor." Ethan understood what she wasn't saying directly. "Are you suggesting we should look at it?" Emma met his gaze steadily. "I'm suggesting we should consider consolidating, for the boys' sake, and maybe for ours too." The implication stole Ethan's breath. "Emma, are you sure? It's only been a month." "And 17 years, she reminded him. "We're not kids anymore, Ethan. We know what matters. We've both learned that the hard way." In that moment, under the same stars that had witnessed their youthful promises and subsequent heartbreak, Ethan Morgan realized he was being offered a second chance. Not just at fatherhood, but at the life he should have chosen 17 years ago. "I love you, Emma," he said, the words he'd held back for weeks finally breaking free. "I never stopped." Tears glistened in Emma's eyes. "I think part of me always knew you'd come back someday. I just never imagined it would be like this." "Life rarely follows the path we expect," Ethan said, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. "But sometimes it leads us exactly where we need to be." 6 months later, Ethan stood in the auditorium of Boston Community College, watching with immeasurable pride as Emma walked across the stage to receive her nursing degree. In the seats beside him, Jason and Liam cheered wildly, their voices rising above the crowd. "That's our mom!" Liam shouted, standing on his chair for a better view. "Yes, it is," Ethan agreed, his heart full to bursting. "The most amazing woman I've ever known." Jason, now 17 and growing more confident in their relationship each day, nudged Ethan's shoulder. You know she's going to be late to her own graduation party, right? She'll want to thank every professor individually. Ethan laughed. Some things never change. Later that evening, as friends and family gathered in their new apartment to celebrate Emma's achievement, Ethan found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. From the shock of finding Emma cleaning his office, to the joy of building a family together, every step had taught him what truly mattered in life. As Emma crossed the room toward him, radiant in her accomplishment, Ethan knew with absolute certainty that success wasn't measured in corporate titles or bank accounts, but in the love that surrounded him now, a love he'd almost lost forever. "Happy?" he asked as Emma reached his side. "Beyond words," she replied, her eyes shining. "Thank you for believing in me." "Always," Ethan promised, drawing her close. "It just took me a while to find my way back to you." Over Emma's shoulder, he caught Jason's eye. His son, their son, raised his glass in a silent toast, acceptance and forgiveness in the gesture. Beside him, Liam bounced excitedly, his breathing clear and strong, thanks to the specialist care Ethan had helped arrange. This, Ethan realized, was true success. Not the corner office or the executive title, but the family he'd found again against all odds, and the love that had waited patiently for 17 years to be reclaimed. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.